Welcome, everybody, to Reality Change with Kris. My name's John Hawkins, and I'm here with my friend Serge Granbois.
Hey, and I'm Serge, and I'm here with my friend John.
Funny how that works. I think
Yeah, I don't know who arranged that, but it's really clever.
So we are getting ready to have a wonderful new session with Kris. And before I sort of start musing a little bit, as I often do about the last show to kind of prime the pump a little bit, Serge, you were saying something, you had an interesting experience today.
Yeah, I had some business to attend to in the Young and Bloor area. And because there's so much traffic at 9 a.m. in that area, I didn't want to take the car down.
Mm-hmm.
So I took the subway. It's maybe a 12-minute subway drive from where I live up the road. But even going to the subway, in the subway, leaving the subway and going to my destination, and even a little bit after, I felt slightly dissociated. Not to the point where, you know, Kris was going to be there. And of course, these kinds of experiences don't frighten me in any way, shape, or form. I just like to see what's going to happen.
All right.
But my sense was that I was walking amongst literally streams of people, all going to their different offices and buildings and so on and so forth. And I had a very, very strong sense of my being distinct from them all. And to me, it was like walking or swimming in all sorts of ocean currents. Yeah, like that. It was very strange in a way. You know, these things don't worry me because I've had all sorts of different things in my life. But this one was very interesting because it stayed for quite some time. And to me, it was like I was traveling in one specific possibility.
Oh, I see.
Out of all sorts of different things I could have chosen to do, even though I had an appointment, that was not the point. I could have chosen something else. Oh. But that's the one that I like I was surfing that particular current.
All right. Waveform pattern.
It was very interesting. I felt calm and quiet about it all, but just like slightly out of sync in a way with the current time frame, if you want to call it that, but yet somewhat part of it at the same time. So that's why I refer to it as being slightly dissociated.
So you were straddling different...
something of that nature, yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting.
And I know Kris will have something to say about it. So.
Oh, I'm sure.
We'll see. Is there anything he doesn't have anything to say about?
No, take it easy. Take it easy. Yes, well, that sounds very interesting, Serge. Anyway, so what do you think Kris has to say about that?
Well, I don't know yet.
Oh, all right. Fine. Well, I'm going to then talk about what he said last week, which was very, very interesting. He said that he greatly expanded my idea of self and identity. I had been thinking that this body, of course we know that's the classic error, is to think your body is yourself. But what I meant by that, I was thinking that this lifetime was myself, this focus, and that the various aspects and the dream experiences I had were all, you know, somewhat less than this, that they were sort of ancillary. Well, Kris helped me to understand that every other aspect of myself, every other lifetime I've lived, is its own complete soul, acting as a mirror and an inner companion for the good of everything, for the good of the whole community of selves. That I'm actually a community of selves. He went further on Monday night. A civilization of selves is what I am, right? And
there's a set of words that are flowing in. Something he said, the journey of the one is the journey of the many.
Yes, the life of the one is the life of the many. So,
That's kind of, I was going to say Zen-like, but no, that's more like Vulcan-like.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is. But it really helped expand my understanding of who it is that I am. Now, the questions that arise for me are, let's pretend we're talking about a pyramid gestalt, because that's the terminology we used. This is Sethian terminology. So we have a pyramid gestalt, and he said that the pyramids have many more points on them than I had been aware of, which is fine. So I'm this soul over here, and this halfway down on this side. That's me having my focal experience here. My past life in Ethiopia is over here, and my future life in Timbuktu is up here, right? All of these things are aspects of this one. In a way, he used the idea of a diamond with many facets, right? So I'm one facet of the diamond. But he also said that in a funny sort of weird way, this may be a Kintiya Beta Beta Tattva type of deal, but I'm also the whole thing. I'm also the essence. I'm also the oversoul involved there. So I'm sort of saying, well, I'm a little confused about exactly who I am.
Now we trust that you are comfortable.
Thank you, Kris.
And we thank you for your multifaceted consideration.
And thank you.
Now, some may say that being confused about who one is perhaps suspect.
Oh.
But on the other hand, it is a very therapeutic process.
Sure. Movement.
In the sense that dislodging or lifting the anchor of the old conceptions of I am the body, I am white, I am black, I am male, I am female, I am Canadian, I am American, I am Polish, I am Russian, I am Chinese. All of these are strictly related to the body, have nothing to do with the greater concept. And a great deal of disparity is experienced as a result of over-identification with the bodily conception of life.
I know that.
So by questioning the so-called rock-solid idea that one is only the body, you set up, you put into motion a healing process. That healing process begins to snowball. And it leads you, if you allow it, it leads you to recognize yourself well beyond the parameters and the limitations of merely clinging to the bodily conception of life, but embracing so much more of the whole self. Not the whole foods, the whole self. And once an individual becomes comfortable with such a loose definition of self, then increased perceptions and insights into the nature of reality itself begin to form. When the idea of self is limited too rigidly to the bodily conception of life, anything else is suspect. Therefore, the self must set up defenses against its own self.
That's true.
Causing quite a difficult situation.
Blockages everywhere.
Indeed. So one more or less shuts themselves in. Talk about a shut-in. This time in the worst possible place, their own psychological fortress. Nothing can get in, but nothing can get out. So you are cutting yourselves off. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely understand. And thank you for that reframing of the idea of I'm not quite sure who I am as being a positive thing. I was thinking it as a deeply confused thing, but we're saying we're loosening things up a little bit and floating around.
In fact, there is a deep portion or aspect of your own self that is fully aware of the scope and magnitude of the magnificence and the enchantment of the whole self. But it cannot act upon that certainty, upon that knowledge, if it is not allowed to. It must keep it at bay, it must keep it back, it must hide it from the rest of the self.
Right.
Especially the one focal personality that may be experiencing difficulties with identity beyond sensory perception.
Okay, so why? It's wonderful to know that there's some aspect of me that has a very clear understanding of this. In what sense am I the whole self, and in what sense am I merely, not merely, but a focal, a portion, a part and parcel?
The part of you that is accustomed to the everyday perceptions, what you consider your, perhaps, the ego self.
So a day-to-day life here, yeah.
But once that particular aspect of selfhood begins to receive information and knowledge and therefore education about the greater resources, then it may become less and less troubled. In fact, begins to heal. And is no longer, at some point, no longer concerned about identity.
Oh, that's
It does not have to double down on it.
Oh, I see, okay.
And as an example of that, Joseph described his little experience from this morning.
Yeah.
This is not the first time he has had such experiences, but this is the first time where he was extremely conscious of it. It was at the forefront of his awareness. In line with the information we provided over the last few weeks, this is having an influence. And his experience was basically that of other portions of the self able to share the focal point of the personality in a manner with which Joseph was slightly aware of their various presences. So, in terms of an example or an analogy, consider that he was no longer the only driver, even though he was walking. So he shared the steering wheel, if you like, with other aspects of his whole self.
Did that result in differences in his behavior? Or just his perception?
He remained calm, but simply that they were able to perceive his environment.
Oh, I see. He was letting them peek through.
Indeed.
Oh.
A little peekaboo experience.
Oh. Well, that's very interesting.
Indeed. Especially one, in your view, this would appear to be a dream self. But to another aspect of the personality, this is not necessarily a dream self, but a genuine personality.
A whole soul.
Indeed. So, to that aspect, Joseph's experienced reality appeared like a dream.
Ah. And so, was this just like, I mean, I know it's not really random, but was this just like a random dream for that
It may have appeared that way, but the personality itself has begun experimenting along certain lines, with playing with the boundaries of consciousness as well.
Oh, and so they sort of met in the middle.
Indeed.
Well, that's very interesting.
We mentioned many times over many years that if you are in a public place, perhaps public transit, train, subway, or otherwise, to think about what you are observing. Perhaps people on the subway, on the streetcar, on the bus, or other places milling about. To your eyes, they may appear as solid and as concrete as you, in every which way. But they, some of them, may actually be the dream bodies of other personalities.
Here on the planet, or
they
wherever?
are having a dream.
And somehow I'm perceiving their dream body.
Yes, but you might not know that.
And would the source, the person dreaming, who's lying in bed dreaming, not necessarily lying in bed, actually, right?
Indeed.
We're dreaming all the time. On this planet, or on another planet, or in another...
Let us confine it to this planet for the time being.
For the time being.
You have enough concerns about that alone.
This is only layer 3, after all. We're not ready for...
To the dreamer, all of these people milling about seem like a fascinating experience. And that dreamer has not yet recognized that from Joseph's point of view, this is reality.
A fairly mundane reality, really.
Indeed, a run-of-the-mill, everyday going to work for many, many hundreds and thousands of people.
Right.
So now that particular personality will be pondering what could be the meaning of this dream. And surprisingly, much more of this type of experience occurs than you can shake a dream stick at. Many of you dream that you are in a university setting, a schooling environment, an educational environment. And to you it is all a very nice dream. That is at least how you have eventually interpreted the experience. But it may be occurring in a different, real way, and you simply happen to observe it or partake of it. Now, from your point of view, it is but a dream with interesting perceptions.
So, I'm still struggling a little bit. I mean, obviously, I'm not very evolved because I'm still worried about who the heck I am. I think you said earlier, at a certain point, you don't worry about that. So, that dream personality is a whole soul.
Indeed.
Now, so everybody I've ever dreamt of is a soul in this gestalt that we...
And they play a particular role in line with your beliefs at that point.
And I obviously play a particular role for all of them in terms of their beliefs.
Indeed. The journey of the one is the journey of the many.
So, do I just share their perceptions, or do I share some new understanding of identity with them?
You could say both.
Fine.
The exchanges that occur are sometimes difficult simply because you do not necessarily have any words that define or describe this kind of sharing of consciousness.
Right. Well, we're going to have to think of some words.
By all means, please do.
Yeah. Okay, well, that, you know, I'm not, that feels okay now. Like I feel, in a way, I sort of feel like I've gotten to the point where, as Joseph was describing, I just sort of float, sort of float in a sea of consciousness, and some of it is some of it I identify with, some of it I don't identify with, some of it I share with, some of it I learn from, some of it I teach. I mean, it's all, I'm just floating here.
Indeed. And it might be that you are doing the backstroke, the butterfly, the frog, the dog pedal. Who knows?
I was thinking of a whale sounding deep, and you know, whales can go down for like an hour.
Indeed.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's very helpful to understand that. Well, you know, not understand it, but to catch a glimpse of it. So am I right in thinking that, as you said, over the last few weeks, the material you've been presenting has caused Joseph to have some interesting experiences?
Indeed it has.
Has there been a change in Joseph, or in our group, or in the planet? Because it feels like something has opened up.
That is an interesting proposal, simply because one cannot change without the other.
The life of the one.
And it is not the planet that will change. It is the individual that changes.
Okay.
So the individual's perceptions, the individual's senses, the individual's DNA, all of these things are affected simply because you are powerful resonators of energy.
Okay.
You
Wow.
find it interesting that your species has created solar panels that convert sunlight into usable electricity.
Right.
But you never consider for a moment that you capture a different type of energy and you convert it yet again into something else.
Right. That's that creativity you were talking about.
Indeed, you always have it. In fact, it is not possible for an individual to not be creative.
You know, in a slightly personal, on a slightly personal note, I used to be quite an active artist, you know, perhaps almost daily. And at a certain point, I don't know what happened, but my perceptions changed, and I guess I got to be a pretty good artist, because what happened to me was that I realized that virtually everything I did was, I'm not going to say a masterpiece, because I am attempting to have some form of humility here. But everything I did was as complex as the universe. It was non-different from the universe. It was. So I stopped doing it. But I'm lately starting to, well, mostly, I'm lately starting to think, you know, the pleasure that I got from doing that was not the end result, whether it was good or bad. It was the creativity involved. That was the part that I really, really liked. So I'm thinking, maybe go back to a daily artistic effort.
Indeed, you might find it very useful. And as you pointed out, the end result, meaning the finished product, is usually not the point of pleasure.
No.
It is the very process of converting what you see in your mind's eye, what you feel in your heart, into the product.
Right. Yeah, so I'm beginning to realize that engaging in that process every day is the point, not the pile of images that results.
These are benefits, if you like.
Okay, well, I think that's what I'm going to do. Um, so, where are we
So
now?
now you can take a break.
That's a very good idea. Thank you. We're back. And as usual, we're going to take a few minutes and talk about some coming events and what have you before we invite Kris to join us again.
On Monday, 2 days ago, we started
Yes,
the new Kris group.
great group.
What was the title of that again?
The title of that is Life in the Key of Compassion.
Yeah, we had quite a full house, and it was very, very nice. Quite busy.
Yeah, great
And,
session.
Then on the 3rd of February,
On the 3rd of February, we have the other, you're going to be running 2 parallel courses.
almost.
Yeah.
Mind you, they're 2 weeks apart, but there'll be one Monday night, one Tuesday night. Tuesday nights is the Zen of Channeling.
The Zen of Channeling, yes.
Yeah, it's basically, if you want to learn how to channel, then go to lotus-mind.ca and sign up.
Right,
Kris hasn't offered anything like that in 12 or 13 years.
right. So, and that starts February 3, which is a Tuesday. And just to quickly go over some stuff that everybody already knows anyway, and that is that our private session is still $150 for 2.
Yeah.
Incredible deal. Get one with a friend. Green Book still on sale for shipping.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
I think that covers it for now. Because Origo Books is no
Oh, yeah.
more, so
Right.
there's no more sessions there.
Yes, so, but you know, it's a new year and we have a new, I don't know, I was just saying that it feels to me as though something has gotten bigger. We've embiggened something.
You know, I still love to watch The Simpsons, not as much as I used to. And I came across that word when they must be wrong.
It is wrong.
No, it's in the dictionary.
Well, it's in the dictionary because it was in The Simpsons.
But it's now recognized.
Yes, embiggened.
And begin to make bigger.
Well, I feel that there's something has happened in the world in 2015, in the Kris groups, in the levels of information he's talking about, that has embiggened everything. Even me.
Actually, I'm starting to lose a few kilos, which is good.
Yeah. Welcome back, Kris.
Indeed. Now, you have already twice mentioned that something appears to have changed in the world.
Yes.
And in so many words, yes. What has changed is the perceptive mechanisms or the mechanisms of perception of quite a number of individuals. As a result, then even though it might appear, according to the news headlines, that the world is going to hell in a handbasket. Express service, please. And even though there might be pockets of trouble in many different places around the world, there is always, and there always will be, many oases that give life-giving water in the form of knowledge and information to those who seek that. And though you cannot take a horse to water and make it drink, and sometimes you cannot even take the horse to water, the water is available. When the horse is ready, it will drink. All that to say that the rigid constructs of your ideas about reality, your ideas about science, in medicine, and so many other disciplines are beginning to show cracks in the foundation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
The participation of mankind in nature and in the world is being put into question. You seem to be finding, your species, your archaeologists, and so on and so forth, seem to be finding more and more evidence that contradicts the established line of consciousness, the consensus reality. So that established line of consciousness is beginning to fray a little bit. So people are putting into question, what is going on here? Because underneath all of that, underneath the surface of everything, underneath the surface of all things, this is the underneathness, is beginning to reveal itself. The currents that are moving the world in terms of currents of belief patterns, none of them will ever be eradicated. But people are becoming aware that they can determine a different outcome for their life. Not that someone at the age of 33 is only 5 foot tall and they will suddenly become 6 foot tall. But the beliefs that they entertain that basically maintain the frustrations and the complexes are beginning to dissipate. People are no longer willing to settle. They know they can create something superior to what they have now. Whenever there are massive changes, whether it is within one individual or within a million individuals, there will always be pockets of stress, of challenge the change, resistance here and there, until such a time as there is sufficient change and transformation that the new order of things begins to settle in. So this is a very, very important process. It is not only a learning experience, but a very, very powerful process is occurring. Even though in different parts of the world there are wars and horrors and warfare and genocide, this does not comprise the whole world. And the sooner you come to that recognition, and the sooner you also recognize that for all intents and purposes, this represents a small percentage of what is occurring around the world. And there are many good, great, and fantastic things occurring throughout the world. Then the focus will shift ever so nicely. It is not that you will create from one day to the next and typical utopia, but you can create more peace of mind. That is important. You cannot, as a species, continuously go on in an impersonal capitalist world. And we want to be very specific, and we have said before, whether it is in the form of capitalism, communism, or anything else, you still have all the same challenges, because they are not that much different from the other.
No.
But there are other models of the world that your species has not tried before. It is like going to the clothing shop. You may try one suit jacket, And because you do not like that one, does not mean that now, well, then it is time to walk out. There may be dozens more that you can try on for a better fit.
Mm-hmm.
So these old belief structures are becoming worn. So your species is attempting to create a new generation of consensus reality. And as with all things, it will take time.
And there'll be a few bugs.
Indeed, a few hiccups here and there.
So this is consensus reality 2.0.
You could say.
Or 300.0.
But it might prove itself more stable than any Microsoft product.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the sake of a good joke.
Yes. Now, so, and all of this has accelerated with the new year?
Even a little bit before. Perhaps unnoticed a few years ago, slightly more noticed a year ago, a little bit more noticed 6 months ago, but now it is becoming a little more prominent.
I feel it is, yeah.
You could say then that change is in the air. How it will appear is anybody's guess. But if you are all consistent and choose to have a peaceful transition, then you can do that. But if you believe that your transitions must somehow or other be violent, perhaps even to wipe out all those who do not fit into your ideas of a better world, a different world, then there will be difficulties. But if you choose to concentrate upon the possibilities inherent in every living entity as a major player in the new game, then you will all gain from it.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. Okay, so I'm very that sounds very encouraging.
Indeed.
I just want to quickly go back to what we were talking about before the break, and that is the idea that many lives, many.
The life of the one.
Thank you.
Or the journey of the one is the journey of the many.
Right. So what? Here's the kind of crazy question I'm going to ask. You were saying, you're a community, you're a civilization of selves, and that you're an important member of that, and all these other selves are resources that can help you to address issues. So the question I'm saying is, considering the dream state and the the millions and millions and millions of people that we dream about, they're also part of this game. What that means to me is that when you say we travel in a group, the size of that group in terms of numbers is beyond imagining.
It is not necessarily the numbers that make up the size of the group,
okay,
but the individuals participating, and not in numbers.
Help me with that.
You may have, say, a group of 10 individuals and a group of 100.
Right.
In your eyes, perhaps due to dualities and duplicities, you might consider that, of course, the group of 100 is more powerful.
Right.
But it may be that the group of 10 is equal in effectiveness, is equal in presence. The numbers themselves are irrelevant.
So it's what those individuals are doing?
Doing and being.
Ah. Okay, well.
You consider this. It is said that it takes a village to raise a child.
Right, I've heard that.
Each individual in the village participating in the raising of the child plays a particular role. And that role is pertinent to the individual, the child.
To the child, yes.
Though in your experience, it may seem that as the child matures and grows up and goes away, then the village is no longer necessary. However, when the child grows up and leaves, he still takes the village with him, because they all become parts of his personality, because they are all expressions. But this does not diminish the individual villagers. They still remain whole. It is not that a part of them has left. It is not like an apple pie.
No, I understand. This sounds like the difference between material and transcendental. Look at this smile.
Indeed.
In other words, a transcendental thing is non-different from every expression and every aspect and all the paraphernalia and the pictures and everything. It's all non-different from that personality. Is that what you're talking about? That kind of...
Because you are all, at source, transcendental in nature.
Right. So we have those transcendental qualities.
Indeed.
Okay, well that's very helpful.
The child grows up, matures and leaves and takes the village with him in his heart and his mind, and they will continue to influence the child for the rest of its life.
And maybe beyond.
Indeed. The villagers themselves are never diminished. No parts of them have left in the sense that you could ever know. They still remain whole.
Right.
In those terms, within you is that village. They are comprised of all the various aspects. They all have the particular functions, their designations, if you like, each unique and vital. And you may flex your consciousness and recognize various such villagers, members of your inner community, or you may not. But it depends upon your particular awareness and awakening. And even though you might not recognize this, there is nothing preventing one of the villagers or more than to, as suggested earlier, peek through your eyes. They may be curious as to what is going on in that particular reality.
So just to add that, I mean, that's a wonderful idea, but if I've had 1,000,000 lifetimes, I've got 1,000,000 villages in here. And all the villagers.
Think that perhaps you are limited to only the sum of all your incarnations?
No.
Indeed you are not.
But what I'm saying is that that is a significant pile.
Only in certain terms, but transcendentally they take no real estate.
Well, it's a good thing. Okay, well, that's very helpful for me to kind of reconnoiter that concept.
Consider this. You are aware of various thoughts on a daily basis. Thoughts come and go. There are more thoughts that come and go through your consciousness than you might ever be aware of, because you only are able to spread your attention so thin.
Right.
So you become aware of some of those thoughts and ideas. The thoughts and ideas themselves do not take any real estate. But if you take a thought, you incorporate it, you say negative belief structures about yourselves, then that begins to take up a kind of emotional real estate. It has an influence.
Oh,
it has an impact.
See.
Other than that, you may also, say, be an inventor. So you capture some thoughts, you draw them on paper, you make all the necessary graphs, and then you begin in your workshop to actually construct the concept that you received. So it begins to take real estate in your terms.
Like real estate.
Indeed.
I love the term emotional real estate. So it goes from having no real estate to emotional real estate to physical real estate. If you,
because you imbue that thought or concept with enough emotion that it may propel it into actions that then help create it in your physical terms, in your manifested terms.
Right. Right. Okay.
We suspect that for some reason your fuse is partially blown.
What made you think that?
You are normally not a man that is short for words.
Well, okay, no, absolutely, yes, it's very good. You know, yes, I admit it. I'm trying to get in my head. So, I'm really, let's just think about the planet Earth. Every single being on the planet Earth, whether they're a dream body or not, is part of my civilization of self.
To one degree or another even, and regardless of how remote it may appear. But you are, as a species, so concerned with your little national identity, your personal identity, your body identity, that you unnaturally segregate yourself from the rest of your brothers and sisters.
Right. Oh, actually, it does not just the humans either, is it? It's the deer and the mice and the everything. Yes, okay. Well, that's very, very good. So really, I'm beginning to catch a glimpse of something. Do you remember how we commented a couple of shows ago? You were saying, oh, when you change yourself, then your experience of the world changes. And I said, funny how that happens, and you just smiled at me, as you sometimes do. So there's something about this understanding of identity, something about our concept of self that's absolutely primal.
Indeed. And when that concept of self is rooted in the erroneous belief that you are the body, then you already begin a kind of struggle, because you must hold on to that notion so strongly, you must defend it, even in spite of all the evidence that would show you that you're not the body.
And the pain it causes for you to have that conception.
It can be traumatizing.
Yeah.
Especially if and when that time comes when you are on your deathbed. The full realization that you must give up your apparent identity. It can indeed be most traumatizing because there is the fear of annihilation.
Right.
And such a fear is so strong, it may even prevent the recognition once you leave that body that you did not die, that you are not annihilated. So conditions may be set up in a way that mimic your particular notions.
Right.
Until such a time as you can be awakened from that, pulled out of that trance state.
You were saying that's some of the work that you do.
Indeed.
Okay. Well, here's my question. The idea that we've identified the fact that my conception of self is immensely potent and primal, and that the limitations of thinking that myself is the physical body is extremely limiting. So here's my sneaky question. What is a more appropriate concept of self that is not limiting?
To discover that you are more than the sum of all of your parts.
Okay, it's a little open-ended.
But it need be.
It needs to be open-ended.
Just as it needs to be that for some individuals, the concept of the bodily identity must be firm and solid for their own experiences to flow through.
So that's a limitation they accept in order to have that kind of experience.
Indeed. Because otherwise, an individual, perhaps at a very early stage, may simply realize they do not want to go through with this. And sometimes they do and leave.
Right. This would be a child dying.
They could even be a little older.
Wow. Okay, so so what I'm getting from what you're saying is that the best possible conception of self, other than that I'm the body, may vary according to the soul we're talking about.
Indeed, everyone will be at a particular stage of growth.
Yeah. And so the best concept of self for them at that stage is the one that gets the job done.
Yes.
But when that evolves into this, then we need a new concept of self. Oh, no, wait. We have a new concept of self, and that evolves into this.
There is always a concept of self waiting in the wings, so to speak.
Ah.
But the mind has to be open enough in order to accommodate it. If the mind is closed and filled with old notions and locked tight and the lock rusted for lack of use,
Okay.
it requires a little more work.
A little WD-40 or something.
Isn't it?
Hmm. Okay. Well, that's remarkably, that's very helpful to know that, so the concept of self that I have right now, which as we talked about earlier, is a little bit sort of between two stools. That's the best one for me right now, right? Yeah.
Once you have the information, you have a choice, as with any information, to refuse it or to accept it, and then play with the ramifications of accepting a new concept.
Perhaps a little resistance, perhaps...
Indeed, it is like a salsa dance.
Or a waltz.
Waltz, tango, mamba, all of these things.
Dancing.
There has to be give and take, resistance and allowance, sometimes all at once. So it is truly a dance of consciousness.
Okay, resistance and allowance, okay. Here I was thinking that allowance was the thing. But it turns out in the same way that here I'm thinking that no limitations is the thing. But no, limitations and resistance have their value and their place.
Indeed, many people are firmly convinced that the only way to grow is to attack all of their limitations. They may forget that they actually accepted those limitations, even though it appears that they may have been imposed from an outside influence. They accepted them because it suited a practical purpose at that point in their lives.
All right.
So they must make necessary bridges, little bridge beliefs, that very so nicely allow them to cross their old notions into new ones.
Mm-hmm.
You do not have to blow up the bridges afterwards, but you can continue your journey.
Right. Well, thank you. I feel like we're, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Not at this point. That is sufficient.
I think so. Okay, well, thank you so much.
Indeed. We thank you for your multiple considerations, considering you are more than the sum of all of your parts. And we return Joseph, or whatever version of Joseph he thinks he is and you think he is, to you.
Thank you, Kris. Well, folks, another very interesting show from my perspective. And we're going to do this again. Exactly when and where, we will let you know. And in the meantime, enjoy.